Gacha games are a very weird bunch. It's difficult to categorize them because you may have some like Tower of Fantasy, Honkai Impact, or Genshin Impact, which can range in terms of the amount of things that you can do and the amount of content in them compared to other more mobile and casual gachas. This means that your experience with one may vary from the other, and it's very difficult to say these are all mobile games because yes, undoubtedly they can all be played on your phone, at least to some varying degrees of success. Some of them, if we're talking about Ni no Kuni, if we're talking about Genshin Impact or Tower of Fantasy, have entire PC clients dedicated to them. So today I'm going to take the time out of my day to talk about the best gacha mobile game I played. And I'm specifying mobile because I want to exclude Honkai Impact, Tower of Fantasy, and Genshin Impact from these. Mostly because I do believe they're worthy of their own separate videos and separate evaluation in comparison to each other. Even though they're vastly different experiences, it's more fair. Now understand that I may rate or play different video games and different gacha games for different reasons than you. And as such, the enjoyment I get out of a game or out of a gacha or whatever the case may be entirely different than what you yourself are seeking. I may say something like Honkai Impact is great and you may hate it. So this video is going to be focused on Blue Archive, and while it may briefly talk about other gacha games, specifically ones that may be in the Discord server, join if you haven't already, it will be linked down below. I primarily want to discuss why I think it's one of my favorite gacha games, and why it has one of the best experiences to me. This was further exemplified, and I was actually reminded of why I like Blue Archive so much with the recent update in which I got to see Izuna again. And if you don't know, Izuna was and is my favorite character in Blue Archive. She was kind of one of the few characters, at least early on, who got me involved into the story. She's, I think, one of the main topics of my first 3 videos, and Blue Archive as a whole was kind of the main reason this channel began, and it's kind of progressed from then on, and I understand that, but I still do believe wholeheartedly that Blue Archive offers one of the most solid story experiences. If you don't know enough about a character from the events, you can do the relationship storyline and the sub-story for their club to learn a lot more about them. They're occasionally maybe featured either in future events or in other club stories. This means that there's a bit of integration and the characters do feel, to a degree at least, like they know each other. And to a degree, this makes overall believing and getting more invested into the characters a bit easier, in my opinion. At the very least, it makes them feel more like legitimate characters and like a legitimate world rather than segmented or sectioned off pieces. If there's a chance, whether that be in a relationship storyline, in an event, or the main storyline itself, that a character can interact with another one, and especially if you already met that character, it makes it feel like it's a bit more interconnected, and that makes a story feel a bit more believable. It also makes it a bit easier to get attached to another character, whether that be one you actively have built up, or one you haven't necessarily gotten or pulled yet, because they're very inclined to be involved in the main story of the game. And so if you're looking for a solid story experience, whether that be the main story itself, or the characters themselves individually, I would recommend Blue Archive, and it's one of the reasons that I keep looking for things like this in other games, because it's very difficult to get attached to characters if I don't feel like it's a legitimate character, or if I'm just reading text, or if I'm just reading things here and there. Even occasional interactions don't or pale in comparison to the activity provided and content provided by Blue Archive. It's why, let's be honest here, they have a lot of art and a lot of ships. So I would rather much more quality in the relationship storylines, in the events, in the main story, in the characters as an individual, rather than the quantity of them. Or I would rather have better individuals, even if it's like 40 or 50, rather than 200 that I really can't name. Now, off the rip, is it a perfect gacha game? No. Is the gameplay extremely interesting? Not really. Depending on who you are, you may either love it or you hate it. Because you don't have active control over anything in the game itself, or at least your units and movement, it means that a lot of times when you lose something, you feel like, or no, you could have won if you had the opportunity to position them. And yes, there are units that theoretically can change the positioning of your team, not necessarily with their active positioning, but more so the special individuals who are supports that can drop different items down onto the field to move your units. That is something, but it's more reliant on if you get that skill and do you want to actively use up that slot for someone else just for the opportunity to position your team, as opposed to just relying on the game itself. So it's a double-edged sword. You're going to have a lot of fun, you have nice characters, and the gameplay is fine, don't get me wrong, it's just not amazing. But it's extremely easy to boot up. It doesn't take much on at least my phone or my iPad or BlueStacks. The music is amazing. It's usually been featured in a couple videos here and there, but I may feature it more often depending on the soundtracks I find. If you have ones you like, leave them in the comment section down below, and I may try to throw them in the next video. Ultimately though, I think Blue Archive excels in the character experience and the personality and the storyline, but I think it can fall a bit further behind in the actual gameplay and mechanics aspect of things. With that being said, I would much rather it exceed in one aspect than be average or mediocre at best in all of them. Sort of a jack of all trades, master of none situation. Now, do I recommend Blue Archive? It depends. I would recommend you play it or download it, but depending on who you are, interacting with the community can be a bit iffy. If you're not interested in the more loot aspects of the characters, then obviously interacting with the community is going to be a pretty big toss-up considering how many of them seem to enjoy that aspect of it. But if you are willing to go there, and if you do want to meet other individuals who care about the story or care about the characters themselves, then hey, you're pretty likely to find someone who sims for a unit. And someone who absolutely adores them and have built them up to their highest potential. And I think that's one of the fun parts about Blue Archive. The community itself gathers around the central topic and ideas of the characters being the selling point, not just as things from design standpoints, but also as units with personalities. And you can see that reflected in the live 2Ds, you can see that reflected in the skills and animations they have, and how they move when they are attacking, or even in the cafe, or what happens when you pick them up in the team formation menu. Each of these little things add a bit more flair to an otherwise boring unit. So I think the likelihood of you finding an individual who likes the same character as you or knows a lot about that character at all is pretty high. And the community is small enough where you can kind of go to them and know that that's at least the vast majority of them. It's not super spread out and there's no need for separate areas for separate units because everybody seems to like the same unit. Let's be honest here, Hina is one of the most well-known Blue Archive characters. And with the CN side of the game getting banners here and there, you kind of have a pre-existing average or pre-existing opinion on certain units, whether they're worth your pulling or not. And I think to some degree it ruins the surprise, but I think the vast majority of people appreciate that knowledge going forward. If you're the type to care about the meta, or if you're the type to care about who you should pull for, how they benefit your current characters and units, and who can work well together. If you don't, then hey, you get to know who's coming next. So you can say, I want to pull for Swimsuit Azuna, or I want to pull for Swimsuit Hoshino. I will be pulling for Swimsuit Azuna. I just want everybody to know this. I will absolutely be pulling for her. But overall, I think that Blue Archive, from a basic standpoint, suffers from a similar problem to Nikke, in that the game itself is actually really good and the story is actually really good. The problem is that either the community itself or the marketing for the game does tend to emphasize the designs of the characters. With Nikke, it's the marketing. It emphasizes the designs of the characters and the hypersexualization, whereas with Blue Archive, it's the community that people kind of focus on and say or write the game off as a result. Nikke actually has a deep storyline with pretty interesting units and it actually has those vague relationship lines. So it's very plausible for you to build a connection with the units that you have. But most people will not focus on that because they saw the marketing, they saw the designs of the characters and how the gameplay works or what the gameplay chooses to focus on visually. And as a direct result, they wrote the game off despite how good it may be. With Blue Archive, the game itself focuses on pretty decent designs. None of them are very lewd except for a few select ones. But it's the community that people choose to focus on, the community that individuals choose to write the game off for. Because for some reason, if you sim for a character, a fictional character, it makes you a bad person. But regardless of that fact, I think both these games deserve a lot more appreciation than they currently get. And I will be doing a Nikke video, and if you play Nikke, join the Discord server. I will probably be asking individuals there for their opinions that I can include in the video if they are able or willing to. Either way, my name is Nanaki. Hope you're having a great December. I passed my classes with an A, and I'm very happy. Either way, I look forward to see you next time, and goodbye.